Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Sessions with Courtenay Pollock. Hi Courtney.
Hi Heidi.
Well, I guess we're going to start off with talking about this beautiful mandala behind us. I think it's probably one of my favorites besides the one that you made for us for our wedding. Daryl's my wedding.
Right.
A few years ago. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Well, this is called Floral Blush. And, I mean, you could probably give it other names, but, that's what's suggested to me by it. It's unusual in its color sequencing, and it just has an upbeat, happy feel to it. I guess I produced that somewhere late summer, and, you know, our summers are pretty short here in British Columbia, and even though we're on the Sunshine Coast, and we do have better weather than certainly most of Canada, or the rest of Canada actually, we don't get a lot of snow or anything like that, but the summers are pretty short, which means the winters are really long, and so I wanted to capitalize on the upbeat feel and flush of summer, and the radiance, and of course the flowers, and all of that joy. So anyway, this was an attempt at that.
I love it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Definitely brightens up my day.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on with our next episode.
Yep.
Okay?
Yes.
Take it away.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you guys.
Well, the years kind of were packed full of not a lot of outstanding stuff. It wasn't a dynamic decade for me, really.
Hey, Courtney. So where are we at with the time frame at the moment?
We're moving to the 83 backdrop, and on towards the end of the decade of the 80s. And at that time, I'm in my late 30s now, mid to late 30s. Time goes fast when you're having fun. I was having too much fun, but it was all okay. You know, it was all part of life's rich pattern, as they say. So I'll continue from the third of the Greek backdrops, which came around in 83. Another call. They were going to use the Rainbow Tunnel for that year. When they went to now, that was one that they kept. It wasn't really a design that you could take apart and use, each panel standing alone, because it was just, part of the curves of the whole piece. And they decided it'd be nice to keep that. So Bill Graham Production kept that one. I don't remember what I got for it. Not much. I was probably really happy with what I got at the time, and I do remember that, not having any misgivings about it whatsoever. I was thankful to have the gig and whatever remuneration came along. Anyway, they went to get it out of storage, and storage had flooded. It was absolutely ruined, and so on short notice they called me up. Ruby, it's enough with the squeaking, baby. Sorry. They said, well, I know it's short notice, but we were going to use it and it's ruined. So can you knock out another one? I said, well, I will create a new one. You can call it Knock It Out if you like, but anyway. So it's going to be the third of the Greek series. Ruby, shush, shush, shush. Well, They're like kids, you know. When they're having fun, they can't shut up. Yeah. Anyway, now I had to figure out what kind of design I want, and I hereby hangs a tale, not Ruby. Sorry, the design I've decided to try was this is how the design came about. In the early mid-70s, when we're creating the Wall of Sound, everything that came out of the Hard Truckers cabinet production, which was essentially run with Parrish, Winslow, and Racine, and I would do speaker fronts for every one of the cabinets that came out. And you are being very distractive. I'll just show you to the camera. There she is. Anyway, enough Ruby. Sorry. Now, one of the things that came out, and we were doing hundreds of them, was little monitor cubes. They're like, you know, this big, this square. Literally, the actual speaker front face, you know, once it's on its little frame and in its box, was you know, 5 3/4 inches or something like that on a side. It's pretty tiny, you know. I've got to get a whole little design into that little space. Well, doing tiny little squares like that, and you know, yeah. You know, I was probably getting a few bucks a piece. You know, it wasn't wasn't really that, you know. So I decided I want to come up with a design where I want every single piece, every single speaker front to be unique and different. I'm not going to do a series of all the same ones. You know, that's leave that to everybody else to do. So I wanted to come up with a design where I could incorporate a number of little mandalas or snowflakes, which are each one unique, into one piece of cloth. And I came up with this design, which would produce each quadrant would be a unique and contained little snowflake or mandala, or, you know, a little radiating something that was unique to itself, but it all fitted together with the other 4. And so I'd make these, cut them into 4, and I got 4 pieces, you know, and it probably wouldn't take me much more time than doing just one little tiny one on its own. So I incorporated this on a big scale on the 3rd backdrop. Instead of having a piece of cloth that was like 2 feet by 2 feet and making 4 speaker fronts, I had a piece of cloth that was 8 feet by 8 feet and made 4 feet by 4 feet squares, which is, you know, 10, 20 times bigger area-wise. And so that was the design for the 1983 backdrop. That's how it came about. And I have a picture of it up over my mantel shelf. It was the poster that somebody made from a photo that somebody else had taken, and the whole thing's a bit of a mystery who did it. But you know, those posters became a real collector's item, and I'm fortunate enough to have one for myself, which I framed and put over my mantelpiece. And there are some good photos taken by a number of renowned photographers who are really well known today. But that poster wasn't made from any of their photos. So anyway, that was a design I used, and honestly, it plays really well. It looked great from the audience, from a distance. And it looked good close up too, but you know, the geometry of it was really, you know, stunning. And so it's probably the most well-known of all the backdrops because it just came together so well. I like it a lot. I mean, the serpentine one is still my favorite, the first one. That I found the most beautiful. And the geometric one is a close second for sure. At some point along the way, I would like to incorporate a number of between the further backdrops and the Grateful Dead backdrops. There are some great designs, and I would like to incorporate them in one big stage piece, incorporating parts of all those different designs as a whole theater. So anyway, that was a success. And again, this was another time when at the end of the 3-day Grateful Dead weekend, I ripped up them into the individual panels and sold them, to everybody for whatever it was at the time. Maybe I got a little more this time, maybe 500 a piece. And then they were gone. I have these little fantasy that, one day, but it's been so long, it's been 50 years, so it's been 40 years. So 40 years that people that each of the members of each individual person that had bought one of the panels, they could all kind of get a hold of me and we could reassemble the whole piece, as a reunion, literally, a reunion celebration. But of course, a lot of people probably, they didn't last. They, gave them away, or they, got stored and forgotten or ruined or whatever. I know how it goes. I don't have it. I have only one piece from the vintage days. I mean, literally of stage pieces that in my possession. And and it's absolutely gorgeous, but it's really faded, old faded glory thing, and so that's still a fantasy, even parts of it coming together would be quite something, so that was over, and then we didn't do another series at the Greek for the backdrops at that time. I've done one since for Further, which was a lovely piece. It was my basic mandalas with the X's, so it was like all in a grid of diagonals and mandalas, and it was like 3, 3, and 3. This was quite a big piece, about almost 30 feet high and almost 60 wide. But that was later on. Anyway, so the decade trotted on. There were a lot of things that happened, but they weren't. I was keeping myself pretty much to myself, and. Working, I was doing my tie-dyes, doing other adventures, doing a lot of kayaking with Daniel and our friends in Mill Valley. And so that was all great. And then David Crosby got a hold of me, and this was a few years later, and he invited, I was staying in a motel at the time. I had a suite at a motel, and I was kind of doing the invisible thing a bit. And he came and visited with me, and he invited me to live in his pool house. He had a little cottage on his property in Mill Valley that was literally the house that it was. There was garages under, and then over it there was a suite apartment, which was the pool house, and by the swimming pool, of course. So I moved in there, and David was struggling a bit, as most of you all know, he had his challenges. And I was still relatively healthy, and, had disciplines, and was able to be a really good company for him, upbeat and fun. And so for a year we basically he improved and got stronger and get his wits about him, and we had fun. We played music, made harmonies, lots of humor. We recorded a bunch of series of humor. I don't know what happened to those recordings. They would have made great little radio shows or whatever. And so he eventually got, he went out on the road with a Crosby band, and then, meanwhile, Stephen Stills and Graham Nash were starting to visit, and he, after quite a while of not visiting, and I'm working towards getting Crosby, Stills and Nash back out on the road. And so that was a really fun year, and I had somebody had given me this Guild guitar. Now I don't play guitar. I can improvise and I was really good at creating open tunings, and all David's songs were created on open tunings, and he pretty much stayed at my in the pool house cottage with me 24/7. He was like always. I said, "What about Jan?" She said, "Oh, she's fine. She got the whole house to herself." And I said, "Yeah, but she's on her own in this big house without, the whole purpose of being there is you, So what about Jan?" He said, "Well, I just want to spend time with you right now." And so every now and then we'll get together. We go to the big house and have dinner or whatever. And but overall, now he was working towards having to work off a year of time. It's kind of a funny story. I'm sure David sees the funny side of it himself, but at the time he was driving his Harley Davidson down the main street in Mill Valley and taking a toke, and he went off through somebody's hedge and ended up on their lawn. And and the cops came and they went, "Oh, it's David Crosby, can we just shuffle this under the rug somewhere?" And they said, "Well, not really. We got this neighbor complaining. He's prostrate on their lawn, and he was into guns and knife collection, but he had a really good knife collection, and because he and I just stand around, I set up a dartboard, and we'd throw knives at the dartboard, see which, how many knives we could stick, what kind of knives, throwing knives, big knives, I could throw like shears and scythes and swords and stuff. But I had developed this underhand throw. It was like, I'd do the hilt first. The hilt would go, and right before it strikes, it would do a half turn and bury itself in the board. And I got so I could do bullseyes, pretty much 1 out of 2. And not with anything, but certainly with a good weighted implement. Not too light, it'd be hard to stick a pencil. You can't really do that. You need a little bit of weight and oomph for my method. If you throw that way, and it's like, it's kind of like hit or miss. Some people, if they've really got it down how to throw a knife, where it does so many revolutions before it strikes, but when you're doing it multiple distances, that varies. I've never figured out quite how that works, but my underhand turn was just a half turn right before it strikes. And I do remember one time I was thinking, well, I never use my left hand. I do all this stuff with my right hand, and my left hand isn't trained so I think I'm going to train I'm going to train my left hand to throw. And so I would get, I kind of get the feel of what I do, and then release the knife and kind of loft it somewhat, and then it would just turn on its trajectory as it comes down and come into the board. And so I got that whole feeling set up from my left hand, and from the very first throw on my left hand, bullseye. And from then on, my left hand was always more accurate than the right. It's a total aside, you know, it's like just a quaint little thing. Anyway, David's prostrate on this lawn. He's got these knives and he's got guns and he's got stuff. And I was like, what the hell, David? You know, you're fully loaded. What are you doing? Getting high and anyway, he had to do a year, and he was designated, to some Texas, prison. So part of the thing of it was like getting, David ready to go do that time. He could basically volunteer himself almost at any time, right up to a certain deadline, so anyway, no matter what else had happened, my stay with David definitely got him ready for that, to do that year, which it's a tough year, especially for somebody that's well known. You don't know what you're going to encounter. I'm sure he was kind of known and respected by many in the system there, so he probably had people looking out for him, hopefully, but he got out of it fine, unscathed. None of it's very nice, but and then he was on the road, with Crosby and Nash again. With Stephen Stills and Graham Nash, and so I think I might have improved things there, and it was a fun high time for me. As I have great fond memories of that time with David, because we really did have fun. And then I went and stayed at another friend's house. They had a big spread out in School Lane in Novato, and she'd had this inheritance or something. She's like the $12 million girl. And I had a downstairs apartment in the big main house, and doing my dyes and good company for her, and she had all kinds. But then she started getting into the Persian, and then next thing you know, she's mainlining stuff, and so it's time to get out. And I decided I'm done with kind of wallowing around, way overdue, and so I'm going to leave all this behind, including all the people that I know that dabble and get high and stuff like that, rock and roll, all of it. And I took a bunch of LSD, had a great time laughing at myself, looking back on all the wasted years, and and then went and visited with my friend that I shared the first house that I shared in that was built around the two redwood trees in Nicasio Valley. I went and visited with him. He had a lovely cottage out on Tomales Bay with a boat launch going into the water, and I just slept in my sleeping bag on his floor. Throw it down each night, roll it up in the morning, and I'd go off and do whatever. So on the first day there, we went in to have a beer. There's a restaurant called Nick's Cove, and it's a seafood restaurant. And it's literally less than 100 yards away from his little cottage, and there's nothing else around. There's a bunch of little cabins between his place and Nick's Cove that's literally a stone's throw away. We went to the bar there and have a beer, and the barman says, do you know how to shuck and barbecue oysters, either of you guys? I said, Jerry goes, no. He said, I did salmon fishing on a fishing boat, salmon cooking on a fishing boat, when I was a teenager. I don't think that counts. It's nothing like. Anyway, and I went, well, how hard can it be? What's the gig? What's going on? He said, well, our oyster person, just left. They're supposed to show up today, and they just phoned and said they're done. And I said, well, what's the gig? He said, well, you got to shuck and barbecue the oysters for Friday evening, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday, lunch and evening. And you start Friday afternoon. And I said, well, I can probably start Friday evening because, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I started doing the shucking, and you'd think it would be easier. My hands were like hamburger. I was going to stick this thing in and crack that. Yeah, man, there is a finesse to it, which, I got, shown to my chagrin by this petite little, cute, delightful Hispanic girl who actually grew up as a kid shucking oysters for Charlie Johnson's Oyster Company, which was just out of Drake's Bay, historic place. And he has one of the best, it's one of the best oyster places. And, I'm laboring away at the sink, I got oyster all over me, and I'm like in a wretch, but I'm managing to do it quite clean by now. I'm managing to do 2,000 to 2,500 oysters a weekend, and barbecuing them, and the fleet of servers that are taking them out. All these young girls, young women, I should say. And so I get into do Friday, and there's this delightful young lady, and she's dressed and she's got jewelry on. She looks like she's made up for the evening, and she's standing on a box in the sink shucking these oysters. And I go right up and I said, hello, what's the story here? She said, I thought I'd come and give you a hand. Maybe you'd like to learn from my technique. And I said, oh yeah, I'd be delighted. So anyway, she would like this, and then she would knock them out, scoop, lay them down. She's I never did get the hang of it. She said, oh, I grew up doing this as a kid, as a child. My mother worked at Charlie Johnson's. I did, a bit of a show up, Anyway, I said, so how come you, she said, well, I actually wanted to meet you. So I said, well, now we're talking. You got some other techniques. Anyway, so there were, there was a lovely group of ladies that worked there, and served there, and of course we all became great friends. And so, I had divorced myself from rock and roll scene and all my friends that were involved there because of the drug stuff, and just wanted to, be way beyond all that, because I had, made a decision. I was like on the straight and narrow, and no, I'm no turning back. And so so that was good. Anyway, I was visiting my friend Daniel, that I'd mentioned in the last episode, Daniel Svergerko, and now Daniel Murphy, who's producing shows in Mill Valley. Now I was visiting, and I think I mentioned there was 3 kids that grew up and became teenagers and young adults, his partner Carol Burns' kids. The 3, wonderful human beings. And the oldest, Dean, he was a really fabulous artist, he was a crazy kind of art, but he was a really good, creative painter. And he said, I'm working at this place, I'm actually doing some retouching some antique varnishes, and down at this place called Antiques, Valenti Antique and Restorations, and they need another person. And I know you grew up around antiques and probably know a lot of this stuff. So he said, this is another opportunity waiting for you. And I said, well, okay, I'll go with meet. So we're at our half hour, and to be continued.
Oh, wow, that was fast. Holy cow. All right, guys. So we're going to do 2 parts to this. So
Right.
stay tuned and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you, Heidi.
Bye, guys.